Hi, I'm Marley. I'm a med student and I had a lot of questions about COVID vaccines. And as I was researching, I noticed that a lot of places had good bits of information, but it was sometimes hard to find and spread across various sites and pages. Here, I've condensed all of that material into a more understandable, manageable format that has been really helpful for me, and so I hope that it will also be helpful to all of you watching. Because this is such a sensitive topic for a lot of people right now, please know that I am not sponsored, affiliated with, or endorsed by Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, or any other institution or company. And also, this is not medical advice. I'm a med student, a student doctor. I am simply synthesizing and I am relaying information and answers to frequently asked questions from reliable resources and institutions. I will put links to all of my resources below in the description box. And while you're over there, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you have a question that I didn't get to in this video, please feel free to comment down below. And with that, let's get started on the first question. The main two differences between these two vaccines are based on who they are approved for and how they are stored. The Pfizer vaccine is approved for people 16 years old and older, whereas the Moderna vaccine is approved for use in people 18 and older. The Pfizer vaccine needs colder storage and is given at a 3-week interval. Meanwhile, the Moderna vaccine can be stored at a little warmer temperatures and is given at a 4-week interval. So one thing to note is that these vaccines are pretty similar in their side effect profiles. This is because, in part, they are both mRNA-based vaccines, and we will get into what that actually means here in a minute. Now on to the next frequently asked question. So I believe this question is really important because a lot of people just don't know exactly how these vaccines work, and there's a lot of confusion about what is mRNA, how does that work inside of your body. So to answer this question, I actually really love the way that NYU Langone Medical Center put this and explain this. And I'll read it so that I don't botch it. Here you go. The mRNA vaccines work by relaying a set of instructions for how to build this protein. Okay, this protein, it's a little tiny piece of coronavirus called a spike protein. So the mRNA vaccines work by relaying a set of instructions for how to build the spike protein with the goal of teaching your immune system how to disarm it. Okay, cool. After injection, the vaccine particles come into contact with immune system cells and deliver the mRNA message. You need to make this spike protein, and here's how. As the vaccinated cells start churning out the spike protein, other immune cells realize that the protein should not be there. And that's when the battle begins. The immune system starts building an immune response and making antibodies. That's good, that's what we want it to do. And that's how we train the immune system to recognize the spike protein. And that's what protects us from being actually infected. So that was a great explanation from NYU Langone. Here's kind of my recap, my clarification, the way I think about it. So your mRNA is acting like a messenger, telling the protein-making factories in your cells called ribosomes to start making all this spike protein. The spike protein by itself cannot give you coronavirus. It's just like this tiny little broken off piece. An mRNA vaccine has little things called mRNA in it, and we call them mRNA because they're messenger RNA, just dropping off instructions to your cells, telling them, hey, probably a good idea. You should probably be making an immune response against this little protein here that I've got for you, that I'm showing you right here. And so your body's like, oh, okay, thanks for the heads up. And then you can start an immune response against that. That's when people kind of get like the soreness, some people can get like body aches after getting the vaccine and both rounds of the vaccine. That's your body being like, oh, awesome, we got this heads up. We're gonna get ready so that if this thing comes in for real and we get for real infected, we got this. And so a branch off of this question, a lot of people ask, well, will the COVID vaccine give me COVID? No, the reason why, like we just talked about, all that's in there is mRNA and a tiny piece, a broken off piece of the real coronavirus. Think of the real coronavirus as this big fat blob with all these proteins on them that help them actually like infect and do what they need to do inside of someone's body to make them sick. Okay, there's a lot that goes into that. All that's in a vaccine, an mRNA vaccine, both of the ones available right now, they've just got like a little broken off piece of one of those proteins sticking out on the surface of the actual coronavirus. Okay, next question. Let's go. Number 3. This is a big question. This is an important question. Given the speed of development of these vaccines, it's understandable that a lot of people have questions. I definitely had a lot of questions about this because under normal circumstances, vaccines take a long time to develop and get to market and distribute, right? Up to like 20 years. And there are lots of reasons why the COVID vaccines were able to be manufactured and distributed in the time frame that they were. So first of all, the amount of pressure to get this vaccine out was unbelievable. Having the social push behind this kickstarted it, obviously. That's a huge thing that people, I think, overlook a lot. This is my take. I think we really underestimate the power that the people have in pushing this kind of stuff forward. But also, if we're gonna get into the details of what actually emergency use authorization is, there's a great article on it by the FDA where they go and explain what this whole process is. This was the best explanation that I could find. It's from the FDA website, makes sense, it's clear cut. Let's read it. An emergency use authorization, EUA, is a mechanism to facilitate the availability and use of medical countermeasures, including vaccines, during public health emergencies such as the current COVID-19 pandemic. Some people may ask, like, well, why don't we just always have this in place? Like, okay, the FDA can't just do this for anything. There has to be an actual public emergency announced for the FDA to be able to issue an emergency use authorization. The FDA is really straight up here. Right, listen to this. Under an EUA, FDA may allow the use of unapproved medical products or unapproved uses of approved medical products in an emergency to diagnose, treat, or prevent serious or life-threatening diseases or conditions when certain statutory criteria have been met, including that there are no adequate, approved, and available alternatives. So basically, it's kind of like, well, it's met these levels criteria for safety and efficacy, and we've been able to see that in the data. It doesn't mean that it has not been tested. It just means it has been tested enough for them to say, this is better than any alternative out there that we have currently. So even though we haven't tested every tiny detail like we would want to, in an ideal situation, we're gonna put this out to the public for use because it's better than nothing. And the FDA on the same site, on the same page, talks about whether or not the COVID-19 vaccines are rigorously tested. And yes, of course they are. They still had to go through clinical trial stages, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And I'm not gonna go into all those details because that is a whole other discussion. But thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people had to be involved in these clinical trials, had to gather a lot of data, and the FDA had to sort through all of that data like crazy. So a while back, I was on a meeting with the president of the AMA, Dr. Susan Bailey, as well as Dr. Peter Marks, who is the director of the Center of Biologics Evaluation and Research at the FDA. That was a very interesting meeting. Dr. Marks had some great responses, great insights into this process. And one thing that stood out to me about this that he said was, we are the gold standard regulators in the world, the FDA is. And he said, I've gotten emails this morning from regulators on 3 other continents about what to do because we are trusted. These are very well tested, he said. Over 40,000 people in trials, which means 15 to 22,000 people getting these vaccines, which is above the average for the size of the trial programs for vaccines comparable like HPV or Pneumovax. And another thing that should be noted about emergency use authorization and the timeline here is that this timeline has been compressed, said Dr. Marks, but nothing has been missed. Like, they weren't skipping steps. How did we save so much time on this? Part of the answer is that vaccine companies started manufacturing the vaccine before they even knew that it would be approved. This is from the FDA. Manufacturing was already happening so that we could go ahead and start distributing those vaccines almost immediately if they are given emergency use authorization by the FDA. So this compression of the timeline had a lot to do with the fact that the manufacturing was being done simultaneously with data evaluation. And also keep in mind that a lot of people are like, oh, what is this mRNA stuff? It's new. Like, no. Part of the reason why this could be done in such a short time was because it is mRNA based. mRNA is not a new thing in technologies and vaccines. It's been studied for decades. It's these 2 vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, are the first 2 widely available public mRNA-based vaccines, but mRNA vaccine technology has been around for a long time. And one of the big advantages to mRNA in the vaccines is the fact that it can be manufactured very, very quickly compared to other types of vaccines. And we're not going to go into the other types of vaccines. That's a totally massive conversation we could leave for a different video if people are interested. But here I will not go into those types. Another piece of information I found was this from the CDC and Cleveland Clinic. So the reasons mRNA vaccines have an edge as far as compressing production time is you can make them from readily available materials. This means that the process can be standardized and scaled up much easier and faster than other types of vaccines. And to top it off for this EUA question, there's some great information from Johns Hopkins, an article with Dr. Sharfstein, former principal deputy commissioner of the FDA. In this article, they explain what an EUA actually is, how it's been used in the past, and there were also EUA fact sheets published when the EUA went through for each of the vaccines. And now there are 4 that have received emergency use authorization, even though 2 are only widely available right now. And those 4 are Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Janssen. Please tell me which one it is. I don't want to pronounce it wrong, but I think I did. And this is all stuff that I hadn't heard about. So I hope you guys found this information helpful for answering this question. Now for the next frequently asked question. So as far as side effects go for these 2 vaccines currently out, Pfizer and Moderna, they both have a pretty similar side effect profile, which includes tiredness, just feeling like kind of general rundown. You can develop a headache, possibly a low-grade fever, and then obviously like pretty much any vaccine may be sore at the injection site. Some people more than others. Totally depends. Some people are like, oh, I didn't even feel it. I didn't get a fever at all. I didn't get a headache at all. I just kind of felt a tiny bit tired. That's it. And then other people are like, oh my gosh, my arm. You know, it just really depends on the person. Variability in people's responses to vaccines is super normal. Some people experience all of the side effects and some people experience none. So the good thing is when you're experiencing side effects, you can know that your immune system is working. That's good. That's what you want it to do. It means that your body is taking notice of that little spike protein that's inside the vaccine and it is mounting a response against it, which is a good thing. If you do happen to experience some arm soreness, using it and exercising it actually does make it feel better. Sounds counterintuitive, but it does help. I do it every time. I always do arm day after getting a vaccine. And at the time you're like, oh, this kind of hurts, but it always feels better faster if I do that. So highly recommend. Don't forget drinking a lot of water also helps to stave off and reduce the effects of any low-grade fever that you may get from either of the coronavirus vaccines. All right, let's go to the next question then. Okay, this one should be pretty cut and dry. I found an awesome list. Oh my gosh, I've looked everywhere for a good list of ingredients that included both vaccines and also an explanation of what each of the ingredients actually is. Because a lot of places have just a list of ingredients, but they don't tell you what they are, like what they do. And even though I'm in med school, that doesn't mean like I know what all of this stuff is. And so it was really nice when I found this website. And again, I'm putting my links into the description box below. This one is from Meridian Health. And I'll go ahead and read this list of ingredients off the Meridian website. The Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is made of the following ingredients. mRNA, we already talked about this, so I'm not gonna rehash that. We already know what that is. If you don't remember, rewind the video, watch that bit again, it's toward the beginning. Lipids, which you can kind of think of lipids as little fat molecule bubbles. There are several types. It says the following lipids are in the new COVID vaccine. Their main role is to protect the mRNA and provide somewhat of a greasy exterior that helps the mRNA slide inside the cells. And there are some really long names in here. Bis-hexane 6,1 diet. Yeah, no, I'm gonna forget that. 2-hexaldecanoate. Oh, I got that one. Oh, I know this one. Cholesterol. Cholesterol's in it, but not like it's going to give you like high cholesterol or anything. In absolutely minuscule amounts. It's not good. If you have high cholesterol, don't freak out. This is not going to like bump you up over the edge on your cholesterol levels. They're all just basically forming a protective bubble around the mRNA because mRNA is kind of fragile. There are also salts. And what salts do is they help, as Meridian Health says, balance the acidity in your body. So also kind of a protective mechanism. There's also sugar, basic table sugar, also known as sucrose. This helps the molecules maintain their shape during freezing. Because remember, to be stored properly, this one in particular, the Pfizer, has to be really cold. So to prevent it from just disintegrating when it's frozen, the sugars help the molecules in the vaccine to maintain their shape. Kind of need that. All right, and that's it for Pfizer. The mRNA, those lipids, salts, and tiny bit of sugar. It sounds like your pantry. All right, the Moderna vaccine. Again, mRNA, same. Oh look, also lipids. Weird. Same cholesterol, essentially looks like the same job of protecting the mRNA in the vaccine. You have one called SM102, 1,2-dimeristerol, something extremely long that I cannot pronounce right now. And then one called DSPC. The one thing that the Moderna vaccine has that the Pfizer vaccine does not have is something called an acid stabilizer. And it helps basically the salts and the sugars work together to maintain the stability of the vaccine after it's produced. That is called tromethamine and tromethamine hydrochloride. So that's the basic rundown. It's not super complex. And if you want to know some more details about those categories of ingredients, go to that website. There's even more information that I won't dive into here because it's just a lot. I will leave that for you in the description box to explore more if you'd like. And now on to the very last question for part 1 of the COVID-19 vaccine FAQs. Ooh, allergic reactions. Very common question. I've gotten this question from like friends and family, and I'm like, I'll look it up. And so here is what I found on this. You'll be able to find this information at nearly any major health education website or institution. Hay fever or peanut allergy are not contraindications, meaning they should not keep you from getting the vaccine. But there's a big caveat here. If you've had an anaphylactic reaction to vaccines before, it is recommended to not get vaccinated right now. Other than that, allergic reactions, including shortness of breath and hives, were very uncommon during the COVID-19 vaccine trials. All recipients receiving the vaccine will be monitored for at least 15 minutes after vaccination for possible immediate hypersensitivity reactions. Fancy word for allergic reaction. If you have a history of allergic reactions to vaccines, talk to your healthcare provider before receiving a COVID-19 vaccine. And that's the thing, guys. When in doubt, ask your immunologist or go find an immunologist. The CDC put out a report on anaphylaxis rates that National Geographic actually commented on in an article of theirs, which I thought was interesting. And I thought it provided a good perspective on how low this risk actually is of allergic reactions. I'll read it here. In a study released in January 6th by the US CDC, researchers revealed that the risk of anaphylaxis, a severe, potentially life-threatening allergic reaction from the vaccine, is extremely low. Based on data from people who have received the first of the 2 recommended doses, only about 1 in every 90,000 people on average will experience this adverse reaction. That is less than 3% of the lifetime risk of dying from choking on food. It's quite low. There is also a similar CDC report on the Moderna vaccine discussing similarly low rates of anaphylaxis. So they're both extremely low risk, to simplify the answer to this question. And as always, when in doubt, ask your immunologist. Just be safe. And that's it for part 1 of COVID-19 vaccine frequently asked questions. Thank you so much for watching. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a like down below and subscribe while you're over there. And also turn on notifications so you can see when part 2 comes out. Until then, stay safe and healthy out there, everyone.